Black Waitress's son told the judge, "I'm my mom's lawyer." What happened next left the courtroom in tears. Mariah, a hard-working waitress, had always done her best to provide for her son, Malik. But one evening, after a wealthy customer falsely accused her of stealing, she found herself in deep trouble. With no money for a lawyer, things seemed hopeless. But her 12-year-old son, Malik, surprised her by saying, "I'm my mom's lawyer." Malik had spent hours studying legal books and watching courtroom shows with her, and now he was ready to fight for her. Could a 12-year-old truly defend his mother in court? The next morning, the courtroom loomed ahead of Mariah like a heavy weight. She had no lawyer, no way to afford one, and no hope of winning against a wealthy customer with a team of lawyers. Her hands were clammy as she sat at the table, trying to steady her nerves. Malik sat beside her, his small hands clenched into fists, his face set with determination. Mariah glanced at her son, who had spent the past few nights reading through legal books and taking notes. She had never seen him so focused, so serious. There was a quiet intensity in his eyes that made her wonder if he truly understood what he was about to do. She didn't want to discourage him, but part of her doubted if a 12-year-old could stand a chance in a courtroom filled with professionals. As the courtroom filled, the judge, an older man with graying hair and sharp eyes, entered the room. The chatter died down immediately. The prosecutor called for order, and Mariah could feel the weight of the gaze on her. Every eye in the room seemed to be scrutinizing her, but it wasn't just the people around her. It felt like the world itself was watching, waiting for her to fail. How could she win this? When the time came for her to speak, she could hardly find her voice. The prosecutor, a confident, well-dressed man, had already laid out the accusation against her. He spoke of the incident in such a way that made Mariah seem like a criminal who had been caught in the act. His words were sharp, accusing, and Mariah felt each one like a sting against her heart. Malik, who had been quiet up until this point, suddenly stood up. Mariah turned to him, startled. The judge looked at him with surprise. "Excuse me, young man," the judge said, raising an eyebrow. "This is a formal courtroom. You cannot speak without permission." But Malik didn't back down. He looked at the judge with the same determination that had been in his eyes since this whole thing began. "Your Honor," he said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "I'm my mom's lawyer. I want to speak." The room went silent, and Mariah's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what was going on. Her son, her 12-year-old son, was about to speak in court? Was this allowed? The judge looked taken aback, but after a moment of hesitation, he nodded. "All right," the judge said, motioning for Malik to continue. "But you must follow the rules. Speak clearly and only about the facts." With a deep breath, Malik walked to the front of the courtroom, standing tall and looking out at the room. He wasn't just a child now. He was speaking on behalf of his mother, and there was a fire in his eyes that burned brighter than anyone in the room could have anticipated. "I've been studying law for a while now," Malik began, surprising everyone with his calm and measured tone. "I've watched courtroom shows with my mom, and I've read books about how courts work. My mom didn't steal anything. The man who accused her is wrong." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "My mom is the hardest working person I know. She's never stolen anything in her life. She works long hours at the diner to make sure I have what I need, and she's taught me what it means to do the right thing, no matter what. She deserves better than this." The prosecutor tried to interrupt, but Malik held up his hand, signaling for him to be quiet. The judge, his face a mixture of disbelief and admiration, motioned for the prosecutor to sit down. Malik turned his attention to the judge, his voice growing more confident with each word. "I've heard the accusations, but I've also heard my mom's side. And I know she's telling the truth. We don't need to argue about whether she's guilty or not. What matters is that people who don't know her are trying to say she did something wrong, and that's not fair. My mom has a good heart. She's never done anything like that. She's a good person." The courtroom was eerily quiet as everyone absorbed Malik's words. The prosecutor had nothing to say, and even the judge seemed to be caught off guard by the sheer sincerity in Malik's voice. There was something undeniable about the way he spoke, a child's raw honesty mixed with the wisdom of someone who had lived through hardship and understood the weight of injustice. If this moment moved you, give it a thumbs up. Malik had done it. He had stood up for his mother, not out of anger, but out of love and belief in what was right. For the first time, Mariah felt a spark of hope. Her son, in just a few minutes, had done more than she ever could have imagined. But the case wasn't over yet. The judge had heard Malik's argument, but there was still the final decision to be made. The silence in the courtroom was almost unbearable. The jury sat, eyes wide, their attention locked on Malik, who had just made an impassioned case for his mother's innocence. Mariah could hardly breathe, her heart racing as she sat at the table, watching her son. He wasn't just a child anymore in that moment. He was her advocate, her defender, her voice. She had never been more proud of him. But would it be enough? The prosecutor, flustered by the interruption and the strength of Malik's words, tried to regain control of the situation. He stood up, adjusting his suit, and attempted to tear apart Malik's argument. "This child is clearly misinformed," the prosecutor sneered. "This is a serious matter, not a game. His mother is guilty, and no amount of emotional appeal can change that." The judge, a man of few words but deep conviction, raised his hand for quiet. "We will hear from both sides," he said, his voice steady and authoritative. "Let's proceed, but understand that the facts will be what determine this case, not the theatrics." Malik's eyes didn't waver. He wasn't intimidated by the prosecutor's attempt to undermine him. He simply returned to his seat next to his mother, his face filled with determination. He wasn't afraid. He knew what he had to do. And for the first time, Mariah realized that her son was far more capable than she had ever imagined. When it was her turn to speak, Mariah's throat felt tight, her hands cold. The weight of the moment was heavy. How could she possibly stand up in a courtroom and defend herself when everything she had worked for was being questioned? She took a deep breath and stood up, turning to face the judge. "I've been working my whole life to provide for my son," she said quietly but firmly. "I've done nothing wrong. I've never stolen anything. I don't know why this man is accusing me, but I will tell you this. I didn't take his money. I would never do that." Her voice cracked slightly, but she held her ground. "I've worked at the diner for years, serving people, doing my job. I've never asked for anything more than respect. And that's what I want now. I want justice, not for me, but for my son. He's the one who's had to live with the shame of this accusation. He doesn't deserve that. He deserves the truth." Tears welled up in Mariah's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She was strong, and she would not let this man's lies take away everything she had worked for. She looked over at Malik, who was watching her with wide eyes, his expression full of pride. For the first time, she realized that she was not just fighting for her own freedom, she was fighting for her son's future. The prosecutor, sensing the tide was turning against him, stood up one last time. "Your Honor, this is a case of theft. It's clear this woman has lied, and her son is simply doing what children do, defending their parents. But this is not a game." The judge raised his hand again, silencing the prosecutor. His eyes scanned the room, and for a moment, everything seemed to stand still. Finally, he spoke. "I've heard enough. I will make my decision. If you found this story moving, give it a thumbs up." As the judge prepared to deliver his verdict, Mariah held her breath. Her hands were clenched tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. Could they win this? Could Malik's words, his courage, be enough to prove her innocence? The judge glanced at Malik one last time, his face softening. "Young man, you've shown incredible courage and intelligence today," he said, his voice warm but firm. "I'm impressed by your understanding of the law and your unwavering belief in your mother." He turned to the rest of the courtroom. "But the law is not swayed by emotions alone. It must be based on facts." The air was thick with anticipation. Mariah could hardly believe what she was hearing. The tension was unbearable as the judge paused for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he continued. The judge's words hung in the air like an unspoken promise. I will now render my verdict. Mariah's heart thudded in her chest, and for the first time, she realized just how much she had been holding her breath. Everything had led to this moment. She glanced at Malik, who sat beside her, still confident, still sure, but the fear in her eyes mirrored his own. She wanted to reach out and hold him, tell him everything would be okay, but she didn't know if she could. The judge finally spoke, his voice calm and deliberate. After reviewing the evidence, listening to the arguments, and observing the emotional impact this case has had on everyone involved, I must say this. He paused, looking between Mariah, the prosecutor, and the jury. Mariah's eyes burned with the weight of the moment. This court finds no evidence that Ms. Mariah Johnson has committed any crime. The accusations made against her are baseless, and the emotional testimony of her son, Malik Johnson, has shed light on a truth that could not be ignored. The judge's words were soft but firm, and as they sank in, a weight seemed to lift from Mariah's shoulders. Malik's small hand reached out and squeezed hers, the simple gesture offering her more comfort than she could have imagined. Her son had done it. He had defended her, not just with the law, but with love. The judge continued, "This case is dismissed." A wave of relief swept over Mariah as the room erupted in quiet murmurs. Malik's innocent belief in her had won the day. She was free. The tears she had been holding back finally flowed, not out of sadness or anger, but out of pure gratitude. She wasn't just walking out of the courtroom as a free woman. She was walking out as a mother who had been seen, heard, and believed in. If you found hope in this story, give it a thumbs up. The prosecutor, who had once been so confident in his case, stood there, silent and defeated. He hadn't expected this outcome. But it wasn't about him anymore. This was about Malik, a young boy who had used his heart and his mind to bring justice, not just for his mother, but for himself. The courtroom's focus had shifted, not just to the innocence of the accused, but to the power of family, love, and unwavering belief. As the judge called for the case to be officially closed, Mariah felt her legs finally give way. She wasn't sure if it was from exhaustion, relief, or the weight of the moment, but Malik caught her just in time. She smiled through her tears, looking down at him, and for the first time, truly seeing him, not just as her son, but as her savior, her hero. "Mom," Malik said softly, his voice steady, as if he were the one reassuring her. "I knew we'd win. I just knew it." Mariah pulled him into a tight hug, her tears soaking his shoulder as she whispered, "You're my hero, Malik. You always will be." They walked out of the courtroom together, hand in hand. The world was different now. Their world, at least. She had always done her best to provide for him, but in that courtroom, her son had shown her that true love and support came in many forms. It wasn't always about what you could provide, it was about being there for each other when it mattered most. If this moment inspired you, leave a comment below. What was the most important lesson you learned today? As they left the courthouse, Malik looked up at her with a wide grin. "So, when are we going out for dinner?" "I think I've earned it." Mariah laughed through her tears, nodding. "You definitely earned it, kiddo. I'll take you anywhere you want." For the first time in a long time, Mariah wasn't just thinking about surviving. She was thinking about living, about the future, and about the incredible son she had raised. It wasn't just about the victory in court, it was about the victory of the bond they shared, of the love they had for each other that nothing could break. The days following the court case felt like a surreal dream to Mariah. The victory was sweet, but it wasn't the kind of victory she had imagined. It wasn't just about being cleared of the false accusations, it was about the profound realization of how far Malik had come. He wasn't just a boy who looked up to his mother anymore, he was someone who had taught her more about strength and courage than she could ever have imagined. Her heart swelled with pride every time she looked at him, but there was something deeper in that pride, something that she couldn't quite put into words. In the weeks that followed, things slowly began to return to normal. Malik was still the same curious, compassionate boy he had always been. But now, whenever he spoke, there was an air of quiet confidence about him. He had seen the world in a way most people never would at his age, and it had changed him. It had changed both of them. One evening, as they sat together at the kitchen table, Malik suddenly looked up from his homework. He had a serious expression on his face, the same one he had worn in the courtroom. "Mom," he said slowly, "I think I want to become a lawyer when I grow up." Mariah stopped what she was doing, the words sinking into her like a weight she wasn't prepared for. "A lawyer," she repeated, her voice soft with disbelief. "You really want to do that?" Malik nodded, his eyes bright with a new purpose. "Yeah. I want to help people, just like I helped you. I think I can make a difference." Mariah felt a lump form in her throat. There had been a time when she thought she was the one holding everything together, that she was the one teaching Malik the important lessons of life. But now, it seemed as though it was Malik who had taught her that no matter how hard things got, no matter how impossible it seemed, you didn't have to do it alone. You just needed to believe in the people who loved you, and trust that they would always have your back. If you felt the impact of this story, please give it a thumbs up. "Malik," she said softly, reaching out to touch his hand, "you don't have to be a lawyer to make a difference. You've already made a huge difference. I don't know what I would have done without you." Malik smiled, a small, humble grin that only deepened her love for him. "You taught me everything I need to know, Mom. And I'll always be there to help you, just like you've always been there for me." The weight of his words hit her with a quiet intensity. He had become the kind of person who didn't just accept things as they were. He looked at the world, saw its flaws, and chose to do something about it. And, for the first time, Mariah realized that it wasn't just her who had taught Malik the value of resilience and strength. He had taught her those same lessons, in his own way. Later that week, as they sat at their favorite diner together, sharing a meal, Malik looked up at her with a bright, hopeful smile. "You know, Mom, I think I want to start a scholarship fund for kids who want to become lawyers. I want to help people who don't have the resources, like we didn't." Mariah was speechless. This wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a mission. And it was one that Malik was already determined to see through. If you believe in the power of helping others, leave a comment and let us know your thoughts. In that moment, Mariah knew that the victory in the courtroom was just the beginning. She had always dreamed of giving her son a better life, but what she hadn't realized was that he was the one who had already given her a better life. His courage, his heart, his willingness to stand up for what was right, these were the things that had changed everything. As they walked out of the diner that night, her hand in his, Mariah felt a peace settle over her. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from a quiet house or a job well done. It was a deeper peace, the kind that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be, doing exactly what you were meant to do. And for Mariah, that was the greatest gift of all. The months that followed seemed to fly by, each day brighter than the last. Malik, with his unwavering determination and natural charisma, had become more than just a student. He was already a beacon of hope for the people around him. Mariah watched him grow with pride, knowing that his dreams were bigger than she could have ever imagined. And yet, it wasn't just his ambition that moved her. It was the way he never stopped caring, never stopped fighting for what was right. One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, Malik turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "Mom, I've been thinking about that scholarship fund I want to start. I want to do it right. I want to make sure it's something that will really help." Mariah smiled at him, her heart swelling with love. "I've never been prouder of you, Malik. You've got a heart of gold. I know you're going to change the world." Malik grinned, his confidence growing. "I just want to make sure no one else has to feel like I did, that they don't have to fight so hard just to be seen, just to have a chance." That night, as Mariah sat alone, reflecting on everything that had transpired, she realized just how much she had changed too. She had always been the one who fought the battles, who struggled to make ends meet, who kept her head down and pushed forward. But now, she knew that the real power lay in being vulnerable, in trusting others, in asking for help when you needed it, and in giving others the chance to help you too. It was Malik who had shown her that lesson, her son, her advocate, her hero. He had fought for her when no one else would, and in doing so, he had changed not only her life but the lives of others as well. If you believe in the power of family and perseverance, like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. The years ahead held so much promise for Malik, and for Mariah, the future had never seemed so bright. The diner, the long shifts, the struggles, they were all still part of her life, but they no longer defined her. What defined her now was the love she shared with her son, the strength they found in each other, and the impact they would have on the world together. As they stood together one final time outside their favorite diner, looking up at the night sky, Malik turned to his mother with a smile that was full of wisdom and promise. "We've come a long way, Mom. But we're just getting started, aren't we?" Mariah looked at him, her heart full, tears brimming in her eyes. "Yes, Malik. We are. And we've already done something incredible. We've made a difference. Together." With that, they walked off into the night, hand in hand, ready for whatever the future held, because with each other, there was nothing they couldn't face. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful journey of love, resilience, and family.